Hi guys. Before we proceed to this video, we've got something very important to share with you. Neoliberalism, Inequality, and Authoritarianism by Professor John V. Kofis is available for purchase. You can order it directly from the publisher Little French eBooks or through Amazon.
Hello, welcome to a teaser video, an overview, just a few words about journalism and the role of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Here we are in June 2025, and there is a war between Israel and Iran. Behind Israel, of course, clearly is much of the West, although there are diplomatic efforts by the Europeans. Um, Most certainly, the United States weighing its options on whether to intervene directly. We know that it has had a role in this. It has had, according to both U.S. government as well as Israeli government officials. And all through this very brief war here in mid-June or so of 2025, the question is, what is real, what is true that is happening on the ground, and what is not? The role of the media has been a topic regarding facts, what is presented to the public, and this is continuing to this day, because when we look at the Western media right now versus the media from the Middle East and even from some of the non-Western sources, what we see are not exactly the same thing. The Western media tends to be heavily on the side of Israel, to the degree of editing out much of what is happening. And this has been done throughout the war that Israel has carried out against civilians in Gaza. And of course, the fact is, the ruling on that by the ICC and the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice has been that it is a war of genocide, there are war crimes committed, and even some former Israeli officials, by the way, acknowledge as much. The question of the media is very important. Especially in time of war, there is a great deal of manipulation of the facts, editing out of facts, um, uh, massaging of the truth to the degree that one doesn't know what is real and what is not. But there is a larger issue here of what the role of the media is, both, by the way, mass media, independent, mass corporate media, state-owned as well as independent, and social media in society. Is it to inform the public for the welfare of the public and to allow the public to arrive at conclusions about events, or is it to manipulate the events, to massage the facts, to manufacture consent, as Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky are close to 40 years ago now in one of their books, entitled, in fact, Manufacturing Consent. And of course, there are many others before Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman that had arrived at the same thing. The video which I have done, an analytical video, is on Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And of course, the Julian Assange WikiLeaks saga preoccupied the role of the media in an open society for much of the 2010s and all the way up to the first half of the 2020s, the first half of this decade. And it is not really so much about Julian Assange himself as a person, or as a journalist, but rather about the role of independent journalism and the right of the public to know the empirical data, to know the facts, not facts as manufactured, uh, facts massaged, or facts omitted that they're never brought to light so that the citizen can arrive at conclusions. This is a philosophical question that is raised in schools of journalism, in universities, by the way, and it should be raised. Now, journalists, of course, have not been the safest. And in some countries, like recently, for example, in Saudi Arabia, a young journalist was executed simply because he was a critic of the Saudi regime. In Israel, there have been a number of journalists that have been killed. One estimate is 185 journalists, media workers combined from October 2023 to the present June 2025. Now, the question is why? Some of them are obviously accidents and they're casualties of war. They're, you know, they happen to be in the way. Others, however, are targeted. And the question, of course, of a Julian Assange who brought out the some very sensitive material about the role of government and cover up in with regard to what happened during the Bush administration in Afghanistan and Iraq during the presidency of Bush, and then subsequently the role of various governments around the world, especially targeting the West. All of that has been an issue that has concerned many journalists, as well as, like I said, the case study has been used in schools of journalism to teach young college students what journalism ought to be about and what are the limits of investigative journalism. Um, there are clearly um, there are clearly those in the camp who are very skeptical about Julian Assange. I am somewhat skeptical. I'm not exactly sure that he I'm not exactly sure about his motives, but that's not the issue here. This is not the issue about Julian Assange. The issue here is about the integrity of journalism and the public's right to know what is going on. And this was a precedent established during the Vietnam War when Daniel Ellsberg published the Pentagon Papers through the New York Times in 1971. The public has a right to know what disinformation is passed on and what manipulation of the facts is passed on. And Julian Assange may not be Daniel Ellsberg, in my view. Although Daniel Ellsberg, by the way, had written about him and in support of him, he may not be of the caliber of a Seymour Hersh, the excellent American investigative journalist, although there have been articles arguing hypothetically why is it that Julian Assange was under arrest and detained all these years while Seymour Hersh, who exposed some even more sensitive material than Julian Assange, was never a target. Well, let's leave that aside. The fact is here there's a larger question, and that is the public's right to know the truth by their government. When the government does not come forth with the truth to its own citizens, It violates the social contract, as John Locke in the 17th century pointed out. Uh, it violates it insofar as the government places itself above the people who have sovereignty. It is the interests of the people that the government is supposed to be catering to, not of a handful of the political class individuals or social class individuals' specific interests. That when that happens and the government goes above the law, that constitutes tyranny. That is not liberal democracy. The principles of 18th century free speech and freedom of the press are based on Enlightenment thinking on John Locke as well as Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Voltaire, other thinkers of the 18th century when the American Republic was founded, are sacred principles and embedded in the American Constitution as well as Western European constitutions. And yet, the individual here in question, and like I said, I too have reservations about how he handled everything, but that's not the issue. That is, it's important about what kind of a society do we have? What kind of a society do we want? And the question is, should it be an authoritarian society where we arrest and detain people because of their exercise of freedom of expression, or a society where we um, allow that and do not fear the truth? Now, it is true that technology, by the way, coincided with namely the computers, obviously, coincided with the rise of an entity like WikiLeaks. It made it possible, and massive amounts of documents were, it was possible to put all those online and to publish and make them available to the public. So, in some sense, one could argue that in the era of high tech, of computers, and in the era of social media, WikiLeaks was made possible, and then the question of national security, which is invoked by the government trying to protect its secrets, and it has every right to protect its secrets, but does it have the right to violate the Constitution? Does it have the right to lie to its own population about what it is doing in public policy, not according to the father of Western liberalism, John Locke? When the government lies to its own citizens, the government is not representing it, is not representing the social contract faithfully as it ought to be. I delved into many of the issues surrounding the Julian Assange WikiLeaks case in the analytical video. I ask you to please join me for that. Look forward to that. I look forward to having your questions and your comments, and by all means, please join this channel for more material, which all of it, by the way, this is devoted to education. It's devoted to educating people who are interested in such issues of global significance. Thank you very much.